Hey guys, trying to do a quick video on this electric fans thing I'm trying to get taken care of. I'm swapping the hydraulic fan to a completely electric fan from a 2011 Crown Victoria. Um, it is a two-stage fan with its own fan controller. The fan is the same size as the hydraulic fan that is on the Humvee currently, and I'm I'm gonna do it, even though this setup might actually work without one. Um, just because it's so large and it already comes with its own shroud. I'm going to make a complete box for not only the radiator to sit on that's not plastic. I'm using half-inch square tube, and I'm mounting it with a whole lot better hardware and stuff like that to hold it in place. Something that's a lot easier to get to, because I don't know if you've ever tried to take one of these off, but those little bolts and where they are and all the different size nuts and bolts on both sides and all that stuff, yeah, not going. That's not happening anymore. I'm gonna make it where you can screw one bolt in and one bolt off, and it make it so much easier to install and work on these things. And not to mention, it'll be a lot stronger and hopefully protect the radiator a little better and not become such a hazard. I had under flex in this truck, which not everybody does with the crazy stuff that I do with my truck. But when the frame flexes, so does the shroud. So the shroud would deviate and run into the hydraulic fan, and a lot of times break the fan or start tearing apart the shroud. I.e., why mine looks like that. Very much left of it. So I've tore off pieces of this thing and just tossed it to the side because it was interfering and making all kinds of buzzing noises at certain angles. So again, this is a completely off-road application that I'm doing right now. It's in the testing phase as far as how well it's going to work. A buddy of mine, Chris Fowler, has a Cummins diesel in his Humvee that he personally installed, and fabulous installation. And he uses a factory Humvee radiator coupled with this same exact fan, which is where I got the idea from. That setup, he has had no issues, and he's never had his fan cut on the second stage. So that means it's never gone over 200 degrees, because it's 180 degree thermostat to 200 degrees for the second stage. So that being said, that's pretty incredible if you ask me. My truck never exceeds about 200 degrees. I run a lower thermostat, and with the amount of airflow I have, plus all the extra cooling stuff, because I have an independent cooler for all my fluids, they all are separate. I got rid of the oil stack, the coolant stack altogether, and just run a 100% aluminum radiator from Griffin, which is this is a Rod Millen model I got from Mark down at Predator. He hooked me up, and whoever says bad things about Predator, let's not get started on that. Those guys are great. You just got to deal with them in the right light and understand that they're the people to go to. I don't care what anybody says. I personally run 3 separate coolers on top of my radiator. I run a transmission cooler, an oil cooler, and power steering cooler, and they all have their own thermostat, and they all are set at 180 degrees. So the fans hardly run, but when they do, it's a wonderful thing to have, because they also double as push fans for my radiator at slow speeds. But with the hydraulic fan, I wasn't realizing the same CFM that I wanted, because I never really reach upper RPMs unless I'm really hard in it. And I'm not really hard in it for very long. I usually try to creep as much as possible. Just if you drive in the off-road world and you really know what you're doing, it's not all about romping on your rig. Although I do a lot of that, just because it's fun and I love hearing the turbos pull. But it's really not necessary to get over a lot of obstacles if you know what you're doing. So all that being said, a lot of slow speed stuff, you just don't get the CFM from the hydraulic fan that you need to really cool your system like you should. The great thing about the electric fan is it kicks on when it needs it, cuts off when it doesn't. And you get a certain speed, pulling a certain amount of CFM every time, as long as your radiator is not obstructed. These 2-stage will just lay an extra backup, so it's almost like having 2 big fans. But anyways, moving on. The factory one looks like this. There you go. That's the Griffin radiator. It's the same exact size as the stock radiator. And the Crown Victoria radiator, fan, looks like that. And not only does the shroud they make perfectly fit the size of the radiator's fins, but there probably is a way to mount this just like that and make it work. Unfortunately for me, I'm not doing that. I need something stronger and more dependable. So I'm going to use half-inch square tube, like I talked about earlier, to fabricate a box similar to something I've made in the past. If some of y'all seen some of my stuff, I'm going to use that to make me a shroud, encase that in aluminum, and protect this, and make not to mention make it a lot easier to install and remove. So we will see how all that goes. I'll keep you updated as I learn more about the system and how it needs to work. But we're going to make this work for everybody, and I hope that in the future guys can take advantage of this for their trucks. Good luck to everyone.